My wife said she just went to the cafe. I trusted her. But the security cameras, they showed me the truth, and it broke me. You never know when a common story turns into a nightmare. And the worst part, it starts out seeming completely harmless. When my wife and I moved into that building, everything seemed to be going well. It was a new beginning, a comfortable apartment, an incredible view, silence, security, and best of all, it was close to her work and the children's school. In the first few days, we started to get to know some of the neighbors, ordinary, friendly people, always with a smile at the doorman or a good morning in the elevator. Nothing out of the ordinary, just peaceful coexistence. And it was in this context that the resident of 309 appeared, a charismatic woman, one of those who knows exactly what to say to make you feel comfortable or vulnerable. Beautiful, articulate, a commanding presence, always with light-hearted comments, well-timed jokes, and a way of looking straight into your eyes while speaking. She wasn't aggressive, she wasn't vulgar. He was a strategist. The first direct contact she had was with my wife, actually. They met at the building's gym and struck up a conversation. Then they started exchanging messages in the condominium group. I saw the exchange of stickers, emojis, and good morning messages with exaggerated gifs. I thought it was funny, just another neighbor trying to socialize. Until one random night, my wife told me that the neighbor from 309 had invited her for coffee. She said she wanted to get to know us better, that she thought we were cool and felt lonely in the building. I didn't see any malice, quite the opposite. The idea of having a friendly atmosphere in the building seemed positive to me, and she wasn't going to a bar alone or hanging out with strangers. It was just coffee. With a neighbor. The first meeting was quick. My wife went downstairs, spent about 30 minutes, and came back with a box of homemade cookies and a shy smile on her face. He said they talked about life, about how his neighbor had lived in another country, that she had a different lifestyle and was super independent. Nothing special, but the frequency began to increase. The following week, he had another coffee, and then another, and then an afternoon of tea and cake. Then, a wine night with cheeses the neighbor had apparently brought back from her trip. I honestly still didn't see a problem. We need friendships. My wife has always been more reserved. I thought, maybe it's doing her good to socialize. She always came back saying they laughed a lot, that they talked about everything, and that her neighbor was a little eccentric. But fun. So far, so good. But then I started noticing subtleties. Small changes. My wife started taking more care of her appearance, even when she was just visiting the neighbor. She would put on perfume, change her clothes, wear light makeup. She said it was normal vanity, and I, trying not to appear controlling, let it go. But that strange feeling began to set in. It wasn't jealousy, it was intuition. I started noticing that she hid her phone when I entered the room, that she spent a lot of time online, even late at night. And the name of 309's neighbor started to come up too often in our conversations. 309 told me this. 309 showed me that documentary. 309 sent me a link. It was as if, suddenly, this woman had become part of our lives, without me having invited her. One day, I casually asked, "You're going there a lot, huh? She's become your best friend now." My wife laughed. "Oh, stop. It's just a friendship. She feels lonely, and we get along. That's all." But the expression on her face told me it wasn't just that. Still, I tried to trust. After all, trust is the foundation of everything, isn't it? But the more I tried to pretend it was normal, the more uncomfortable I became. I began to realize she only visited 309 when I was at the grocery store, working from home with headphones on, or out with friends, never when I was free to go with her. And, strangely, she never invited me along. Not once. And then, one random night, I walked down the hallway on my way home from work and heard muffled laughter coming from 309's apartment. Feminine laughter. That kind of knowing, intimate laughter. The kind of sound that makes your neck shiver when you recognize who's laughing. It was my wife's laughter at that moment. I didn't go in. I didn't knock. I just went to my apartment in silence, pretending everything was fine. I locked myself in my room and lay there staring at the ceiling. I knew, deep down, I already knew, but part of me still wanted proof. Something real, something that would tell me, "You're not going crazy." That's when I remembered The building had security cameras in the hallways. Asterisk. The next morning, I went to the caretaker and asked for access to the footage. He said he wanted to see my wife's check-in and check-out times, just to be sure. Unsuspecting, he gave me access to the system with my resident password. And when I opened the recordings, pain materialized. What was intuition became image, and what was silence became proof. After the night I heard the laughter behind the door of 309, my mind was no longer the same. I tried to act natural, as if everything was still under control. But inside, something was shattering. It's strange how betrayal 11, when it's unconfirmed, begins to corrode things that once seemed untouchable. The touch, the look, the routine. Everything becomes a minefield, and every gesture, every word spoken or unspoken, begins to scream inside you like a warning no one else hears. That week, I started paying attention to details I'd previously ignored. My wife, who used to leave her phone on the table while we talked, now carried it constantly. If I walked into the kitchen, she'd lower the screen. If I asked who I talked to so much, she'd say it was a friend from work. She never mentioned the name of the neighbor from 309 anymore. Her tone of voice changed. She was more impatient, less affectionate. She started complaining about everything. At home, she said she was tired, that she missed freedom, that she needed space. I tried to understand, tried to talk, but her answers were always dry, evasive, as if my presence was becoming uncomfortable. One night, when I went to bed, I noticed she was awake, staring at her phone, a slight smile on her lips. I asked her what she was thinking. She was startled, turned the screen down, and said it was a silly meme. I smiled back, but inside, my stomach turned. That's when I realized I was sleeping next to someone who was no longer mine. I tried to talk. I asked her out to dinner, suggested a weekend trip, asked if everything was okay. She said yes, always yes. But the look wasn't the same. The look held distance, and worse, guilt. And the 309, it was still her frequent destination. Sometimes I'd go out just to get something from the bakery, and when I returned, she wasn't home. 10 minutes later, she'd come back from the elevator, smiling, her cheeks slightly flushed. Once I asked if he was with the neighbor. She said, "No, I went to the grocery store." But the grocery store closed at 8 p.m. and it was already past 9 p.m. I didn't confront her. I just observed. It was at that point that I decided to face the truth head on. I remembered the authorization the janitor had given me to access the internal security camera system, and then, one random morning, I waited for her to fall asleep, put on my headphones, and started watching the footage from the last week. I spent hours playing videos, speeding up recordings, analyzing frame by frame, and there it was, Tuesday, 3:42 p.m. My wife was leaving our apartment. She was wearing a simple dress, but with light makeup, something she never did when she was home. She walked down the hallway, discreetly glanced around, and stopped in front of 309. She rang the doorbell. The neighbor opened the door. They smiled, a long, fixed look. She went in. It took him 2 hours to leave. Wednesday, 8:13 p.m., same scene. This time, she was wearing pants and a loose blouse, her hair tied back. She entered 309 smiling, with a package in her hand. She left at 9:01 p.m., adjusting her blouse on her shoulder, and with her hair loose as if she had changed or recomposed herself. My chest tightened. Even without audio, even without kisses. What those images showed wasn't friendship. It was something more intimate, more frequent, more clandestine. But what destroyed me completely was Friday's recording. Friday, 6:47 p.m., the two of them left apartment 309 together. They got into the elevator, which also had a camera, and there, thinking they were alone, they exchanged long glances and kissed. Quick, discreet. But a kiss. There was no longer any doubt. Infidelity was no longer a possibility. It was tender. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling, my heart hammered in my chest as if it wanted to explode. The ground disappeared beneath my feet. I felt a chill inside, as if something had died inside. And worst of all, even after seeing it all with my own eyes, part of me still wanted to believe it was a lie, that it could be interpreted differently, that she was confused, that I was dreaming. But no, it was real, it was recorded, and now, I had to decide what to do with this truth. There are things we see, and even when we see them, we can't believe them. Seeing my wife kissing another woman in the elevator of our building, with the white lights reflecting on her face, was like watching a scene from a movie, but without a soundtrack, without cuts, without a script, just the raw truth. And painful. I closed my laptop, but the image stuck in my retina. The kiss, the knowing smile, the way they exited the elevator, laughing softly, as if nothing else mattered. That recording destroyed me in a way I can't explain. It wasn't just the kiss. It was the certainty. The certainty that someone I loved, whom I trusted with my eyes closed, was living a second life right under my nose. My thoughts collapsed. I turned my memory night and day, trying to pinpoint where it all began to crumble. When was the exact moment she went from partner to stranger? When her silence became louder than any scream? And why, even though she told me I love you, she hid an entire world from me? I sat on the living room floor, alone, in the middle of the night. I tried to rationalize. I tried to justify. I tried to tell myself it was a phase, a confusion, that maybe it was an impulse. But the frequency of visits, the glances, the body adjusting as she left the apartment, and the kiss. I couldn't fool myself anymore. Worse than the betrayal itself was the theater set up around me. She knew I trusted her, and she took advantage of it. For 3 days I said nothing. I observed, I saved, I wrote down, I went back to the cameras, I took screenshots, I recorded dates, times, everything. Part of me said I was overreacting, but another part screamed, you need to protect yourself. During those days, she acted normally. She called me love. She sent emojis. He made jokes about shows we watched together. I looked at her and saw another woman, a fake version of the person I thought I knew. Fake smiles. Automatic kisses, empty stares, and the neighbor from 309. By now, she seemed increasingly confident. He'd pass me in the hallway as if nothing had happened. Sometimes he'd even strike up a conversation with a look on his face that seemed to take pleasure in hiding something. Now I understood her look. It wasn't sympathy, it was provocation, it was conquest, as if to say, I know something you don't know yet. But now I knew everything. And then came the moment I'd been avoiding, the confrontation. She was on the couch, fiddling with her phone, laughing at something that, at that moment, I already knew probably wasn't a funny video. I approached calmly. I sat down next to her. And, bluntly, I asked, do you have something to tell me? She looked at me in surprise. She feigned innocence. What do you mean? I looked at her steadily as never before. Do you have something to tell me? About apartment 309. Silence. At once, she froze. She didn't blink. Her smile disappeared. It was as if the world had stopped. She tried to deflect, saying I was getting things mixed up, that 309 was just a friend, that I was being sexist by doubting the friendship between two women. But her voice trembled. Her tone lacked firmness. Her eyes no longer met mine. I took my phone from my pocket. I opened the gallery. I showed her the picture, the one of the elevator, the one of the kiss. She saw it. She closed her eyes and began to cry. Really cry. But it wasn't a cry of regret. It was a cry of defeat. Of someone who knew they'd been caught. Of someone who knew the game was over. She started talking. He stammered, apologized, tried to explain. She said she was confused, that she hadn't planned it, that it just happened, that she felt alone, suffocated, lost, that the neighbor from 309 understood her in a way she hadn't expected. He said he never wanted to hurt me, but honestly, she had already hurt. And hurt badly. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything on the floor. I didn't curse. The pain inside me was already so great that any physical reaction seemed too small. The only thing I could say was, you lied to me. You cheated on me, and you continued living with me as if nothing had happened. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you. She didn't answer. He just cried. And there, in the silence of the room, without screams, without fuss, I understood that something inside me had died. The next day, we slept in separate rooms, and from that moment on, everything changed. After that night, the house fell silent. The sound of silence took over. The clatter of silverware on plates, the footsteps in the living room, even the water running in the shower, everything seemed louder, heavier. The once simple routine was now an invisible battlefield. She slept in the guest room. I stayed in our room, which no longer felt like ours. The bed we slept in became a symbol of lies. The sheets, which once held love and rest, now carried only hurt and questions that kept haunting me. At what point did she start to pull away from me? What did she find in the neighbor that I couldn't offer? Was it neediness ... or was it choice? The questions hurt more than the answers. In the days that followed, she tried to get closer. She tried to talk. He texted me while I was at work, made coffee just the way I liked it. Even left notes around the house with words like, "I'm sorry, I messed up, I still love you." But I couldn't feel anything, or rather, I felt everything at once: anger, sadness, disappointment, longing for a version of her that might never have truly existed. One day she asked me to really talk. We sat on the porch. She cried. She said she felt ashamed, that she didn't know how to fix it, that she was sorry, that she never wanted to destroy what we had. She confessed that she felt suffocated by the life we led, as if she had lost herself. She said the relationship with her neighbor began with conversations, venting, and before she knew it, she had crossed a line from which she could no longer return. And then she said something that shattered me. "I wasn't faithful, but I never stopped loving you." That hit me like a punch in the gut, because part of me wanted to believe that, part of me wanted to forgive. I wanted to forget. I wanted to pretend I could start over. But another part, the one that hurt the most, knew the damage had been too great, because it wasn't just a hidden kiss, it was a parallel story, an emotional involvement, a repeated lie, a betrayal sustained within the house where we built everything together. I took a deep breath. I was silent for long seconds. I looked into her eyes, which were red, distressed, begging for a chance. And then I said, "I don't want to hate you, but I also can't love you the same way anymore. And maybe that's even worse." She lowered her head. She knew what that meant. In the following days, we started talking about separating. No fights, no scandals, just pain. She decided to leave home and go to her mother's house. "You said you needed to find yourself. You said that, maybe one day, who knows, we could talk again, like two adults who once truly loved each other." And the neighbor from 309. Well, shortly after, the apartment was put up for sale. I don't know if it was out of shame, pressure, or because their relationship also fell apart, which, honestly, wouldn't surprise me, because relationships born of lies have an expiration date, and the truth always comes out. Today, months later, I'm rebuilding my life. In silence. Calmly, trying to trust people again and, most importantly, myself. You still have difficult days. You have nights when your pillow is heavy. You have memories that still hurt. But there are also days when I wake up lighter, when I feel proud for not yelling, for not putting myself down, for having faced betrayal with dignity. Do I regret anything? No, because this pain taught me that self-love can never be negotiated, and no matter how much the truth hurts, it always sets you free.